What if a single leader could change the way wars were fought across an entire region? In the early 19th century, most battles in southern Africa followed ancient traditions. Warriors threw spears from a distance, and conflicts rarely ended decisively. Then a leader named Shaka Zulu began questioning these methods. Within a few years, his bold ideas about weapons, discipline, and strategy transformed a small clan into a powerful kingdom. To understand Shaka's revolution, we must first look at the world he inherited. In the late 18th century, southern Africa was home to many small communities and clans, especially among the Nguni-speaking peoples. These groups lived in scattered settlements, raising cattle and farming the land. Cattle were wealth, food, and social status all at once. Conflicts between clans did happen, often over grazing land or political authority, but warfare usually followed traditions that had existed for generations. A typical battle did not begin with a sudden charge. Instead, warriors gathered on hillsides, sang war songs, and shouted challenges across the battlefield. Spears known as assegais were thrown from a distance, and shields were used mainly for protection. Because warriors fought far apart, casualties were often limited. Once a few fighters were injured, the battle frequently ended. Victory was symbolic rather than decisive. But this system had an important weakness, and that weakness would soon change everything. If battles rarely destroyed an enemy, then rival groups could return again and again. Conflicts dragged on without clear resolution, and power in the region remained fragmented among many small leaders. For centuries, this balance remained stable. Then, around 1787, a boy was born who would eventually challenge the entire system. Shaka's early life was shaped by hardship. His father, Senzengakona, was a Zulu chief, but Shaka's birth was considered illegitimate by some members of the clan. According to many historical accounts and oral traditions, Shaka and his mother Nandi faced humiliation and rejection during his childhood. Eventually, they were forced to leave the Zulu settlement. For many people, such experiences would lead to a quiet life, far from power, but Shaka's story was only beginning. As a young man, Shaka joined the army of Dingiswayo, a powerful regional ruler who led the Mthethwa Confederation. Here, Shaka discovered something that would shape his future: military organization. Under Dingiswayo's leadership, different clans worked together under a coordinated command structure. Shaka proved himself to be a brave and capable warrior, but he also showed something unusual. He constantly questioned tradition. Why throw spears from far away instead of closing the distance? Why allow enemies to retreat and fight another day? Why not train soldiers to move together with discipline? These questions might seem obvious today, but at the time they challenged centuries of established practice. Shaka was not just learning how to fight, he was studying how to win. A turning point came in 1816 when Shaka's father died. With Dingiswayo's support, Shaka returned to the Zulu clan and claimed leadership. At that time, the Zulu were not a powerful kingdom. They were a small community numbering perhaps 1,500 people. No one looking at the Zulu clan then would have predicted that it would soon dominate much of the region. But Shaka had a vision that went far beyond survival. The first change he introduced was a new weapon. Traditional assegais were long and designed for throwing. Shaka promoted a shorter spear designed for close combat. This weapon became known as the Iklewa. Unlike throwing spears, the Iklewa forced warriors to fight face-to-face with their opponents. Battles became faster, more intense, and far more decisive. But the weapon alone was not the real revolution. Shaka also redesigned the shield. Zulu shields were traditionally made from cowhide, but Shaka encouraged larger versions that could protect most of the body. These shields were not just defensive tools. Warriors were trained to hook an opponent's shield and pull it aside, exposing the enemy's body for a quick strike with the Iklewa. The technique was simple but highly effective. Yet Shaka understood that weapons and techniques meant little without organization. So he reorganized the entire military structure of the Zulu people. Warriors were grouped into regiments known as amabuto. These regiments were based largely on age groups, and members trained, lived, and fought together. This created strong bonds between soldiers and encouraged loyalty to the unit as well as to the king. But Shaka believed something else was just as important: discipline.
Training was demanding and continuous. Warriors practiced long marches to build endurance and learned coordinated movements that allowed large groups to fight as a single force. Instead of returning home after short conflicts, many soldiers remained in military service for extended periods. The Zulu army was becoming something unusual for the time, a highly organized, standing military force. But Shaka's most famous innovation was still to come. On the battlefield, he introduced a tactical formation known as the buffalo horns. This strategy divided the army into several coordinated parts. The central force, often called the chest, moved directly toward the enemy and engaged them in battle. Meanwhile, two flanking groups, the horns, moved quickly around the sides of the enemy formation. Their goal was simple but devastating: surround the opposing army from behind. Once the horns closed the circle, the enemy could find themselves trapped on all sides. Behind the main line stood reserve troops, sometimes referred to as the loins, ready to reinforce weak points or pursue fleeing enemies. The result was a coordinated attack that overwhelmed opponents who were still fighting according to older traditions. Military historians today recognize this maneuver as a form of encirclement, often called a pincer movement. Variations of this strategy appear in many wars across the world, from ancient battles to modern military campaigns. Shaka's use of it demonstrates just how advanced his tactical thinking had become. With these innovations in place, Shaka began expanding the Zulu kingdom. Neighboring groups who had expected ritualized battles suddenly faced a disciplined and aggressive army. Some communities were defeated and absorbed into the growing kingdom. Others chose to join voluntarily, recognizing the power of Shaka's forces. The Zulu population and army expanded rapidly. Between 1816 and 1828, the territory under Zulu influence grew dramatically across southeastern Africa. What had once been a small clan evolved into a powerful kingdom, controlling large areas of land and thousands of people. But this expansion also triggered widespread instability across the region. As the Zulu kingdom grew stronger, other communities migrated away to avoid conflict. These movements sometimes caused further wars in new areas as displaced groups competed for land and resources. Historians referred to this period as the Mfukane, often translated as the crushing. It was a time of major political change across southern Africa. Yet Shaka's reign was surprisingly short. In 1828, he was assassinated by two of his half-brothers, Dingane and Mhlangana. Shaka was around 40 years old. His rule had lasted only 12 years, but in that short time, he had fundamentally reshaped warfare in the region. Even after his death, the systems he created continued to influence the Zulu kingdom. Decades later, in 1879, Zulu forces demonstrated the effectiveness of this military tradition during the Battle of Isandlwana. Zulu warriors defeated a British force equipped with modern rifles and artillery. The battle shocked observers around the world and remains one of the most significant defeats of a European army during the colonial era. History often remembers those who ask the questions others ignore. Shaka looked at the warfare of his time and asked why it had to remain the same. The answers he created transformed a small clan into a powerful kingdom and left a legacy that historians continue to study today. Shaka Zulu's story reminds us that history is often shaped by bold ideas and fearless leadership. From a small clan to a powerful kingdom, his military revolution changed warfare in southern Africa forever. If you enjoyed discovering this incredible chapter of history, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more fascinating stories about ancient wars, powerful empires, and the leaders who changed the world.